My apologies.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm not sure who you should be apologising to.
To the House. I've offended the House.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Thank you. Look, it's pleased to be on my feet to take a call on the Education Freedom of Association Amendment Bill and Clause 3 of this bill. As I was a member of the, and still am, in fact, Select Committee when the many submissions were heard on this bill. Yes, and it is a very good Select Committee, but I must say that on this issue and on Clause 3, which is about amending the Education Act, amending the Act that is actually supposed to enhance public education for the people of this country, the Act that is supposed to promote educational opportunities for people in this country. And here we are having a piece of legislation that is actually going to make educational opportunities more difficult for students. And the reason why it will make educational opportunities more difficult for students is because it is, despite what the member who is sponsoring the bill, who has proposed the bill, says, it will put paid to student representation and it will put paid to the student voice. And those of us on this side of the House believe that a strong student voice and strong student representation is absolutely important to make sure that we have good quality education services in New Zealand. And so I do find it very ironic that it's the Education Act that has been amended to propose this particular bill, because if anything, I'm sure that we will find the objective of that bill is to promote quality education, and of that act is to promote quality education. And what we find in the bill that we have in front of us is that it will in fact do the opposite. And if anyone is in any doubt, I just want to take some time to read a little bit from one of the submissions, one of the very good submissions that we heard from the Waikato Students' Union, because I think their submission was particularly powerful because they had been through voluntary unionism. They'd been through voluntary unionism when it was voluntary to have voluntary unionism. This bill proposes to make it compulsory to have voluntary student union membership. But Waikato went through it voluntarily. They went through it and they took their own ballot and they decided that they would become voluntary. Well, that happened in 1996, and in 1997 they spent the whole year planning for what they would need to do to actually retain a student voice under voluntary membership. So the things that they did, at that point their membership levy revenue was $593,000. It was reasonably healthy. That was before they went to voluntary union membership. They created a working party to plan and manage the transition for what they were about to undertake. They sold off campus movies. They started selling assets in 1997 in order to become voluntary. So they started asset stripping their own union in order to make that change. Look, I could read out all the bullet points because it's quite a lot of detail about what they went through in the year before they got there. But look, here's the one that really makes my heart break, because the final bullet point is that all staff were made redundant effective December the 31st. And that was before they even went to voluntary student union membership. That was in preparation for going to voluntary student union membership. And so on the year in 1998 when they became voluntary, they literally had no infrastructure in place to make sure that there was a voice for students, to ensure that the education of those students was improved, as I believe the Education Act actually envisages. I'm sure that the Education Act was put in place to make sure that we had the best possible education system in New Zealand, not a second-rate one, not one where students didn't have their voice heard, and not one that's been proposed by this bill. Mr Chair, I think that being on that Select Committee was, while an enlightening process, it was actually quite disturbing because, of course, about 98% of the submissions that we heard were against the amendment to the Education Act being amended in this way. They actually came forward and said to us that they didn't want the Education Act amended in this way at all. It was 98% of the submitters said that. And so we have a Select Committee, the majority of the Select Committee, who has gone against the wishes of those submitters in amending that Act?
Mr Chair.